Shadowforge.
Chapter 2. The Iron Gate. The Weeping Axe was a tavern built on secrets. Its walls were 2 feet of stone, its cellar ran deeper than the city's oldest cisterns, and its patrons spoke in murmurs that the castle's spies could never quite catch. Kaelindra had spent 3 nights in its back room, listening to the rebellion take shape around her. The woman behind the bar was called Sarah, her mother's closest friend, though the word friend felt too small for what they had been. Sarah had the kind of face that remembered every war she had survived in the hands of a woman who had buried more than she had borne. She poured Kaelindra a cup of something dark and bitter and sat down across from her. "The Iron Gate," Sarah said, "is not the one in the mountain." Kaelindra set down the cup. "I walked through that one. It opened for me. It opened because you carry the shard. The mountain gate is a test of blood. The inner gate is a test of will." Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to a thread. "The usurper's throne room is sealed by a gate forged from the same iron as the crown itself. It does not open for lineage. It opens for the one the throne has chosen, and the throne has not chosen anyone since your father died." "Then how does Vale sit on it?" "He doesn't. He sits on a replica, a chair of painted wood and gilded lies. The real throne is behind the iron gate, and it has been waiting for 10 years. Kaelindra touched the shard through her coat. It was warm, always warm now, as if it had learned her heartbeat and decided to match it. "How do I open it?" "No one knows. The old records say the gate was forged by the first king and a blood witch whose name was erased from every history. The gate reads you, your memories, your fears, the shape of your soul. If it finds you worthy, it opens. If it finds you false, it kills you in a way that leaves the body intact and the soul gone." "That's comforting." "It's not meant to be." Sarah's eyes were hard. "You can raise an army. You can take the castle by force. You can bleed the usurper on the stones of his own hall. But if you cannot open the iron gate, you will never sit the true throne. And a throne you cannot sit is not a throne. It is a monument to your failure." The next morning, Kaelindra walked the city's inner ring. The capital of Valdris was built in 3 concentric walls, each one a century older than the last. The outermost ring held the markets and the poor. The middle ring held the merchants and the minor lords. The inner ring held the castle and the iron gate. She stood at the base of the inner wall and looked up. The stone was black, veined with white quartz that caught the weak winter light and threw it back in patterns that seemed deliberate. The gate itself was not visible from here. It was buried in the castle's deepest chamber, beneath the throne room, accessible only through a spiral stair that wound down into the bedrock. A guard patrol passed. Kaelindra pulled her hood lower and turned away. She had spent 10 years learning to survive. Now she needed to learn how to enter. That night, Sarah brought her a map. It was drawn on vellum so old it crackled when unfolded. The ink had faded to the color of dried blood, but the lines were still legible. The castle's foundations, the crypts beneath them, and a single chamber marked with a symbol Kaelindra did not recognize, a circle bisected by a jagged line. "The gate chamber," Sarah said. "There is a passage from the Warrens, an old smuggler's route that predates the castle itself. It opens into the crypts, and the crypts open into the chamber." "How does a smuggler's route predate the castle?" "The castle was built on top of something older. The first king did not build Valdris, he conquered it. The gate was already here. He simply built his throne room around it." Kaelindra studied the map. The passage was narrow, marked with warnings in a script she could not read. "What are these marks?" "Wards. The old king sealed the passage after the gate was installed. He did not want anyone reaching it without passing through his hall first." "Then how do I get through?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "You don't. The wards are keyed to the same magic as the gate. They will test you the same way. If you survive the passage, you will survive the gate. If you do not, I understand." "Kaelindra," Sarah's voice cracked, "your mother walked this passage. She was the last person to reach the Iron Gate before your father's death. She came back changed. She never told me what she saw in that chamber, but she stopped sleeping. She stopped laughing. She sat by the fire every night, staring at nothing, and she said the same thing over and over." "What did she say?" Sarah met her eyes. She said, "The gate is not a door. It is a question." Kaelindra descended at midnight. The passage entrance was hidden behind a false wall in the Weeping Axe's cellar, behind barrels of ale that had not been touched in living memory. Sarah moved them aside with a strength that belied her age, revealing a stone archway filled with darkness so absolute it seemed solid. "There is no light down there," Sarah said. "The wards eat flame. You will have to find your way by touch and memory." Kaelindra pressed the shard into her palm. It pulsed once, warm, and she stepped into the dark. The passage was narrow, barely shoulder width, and the walls were slick with moisture that smelled of copper and old stone. She walked with one hand on each wall, counting her steps, 50, 100. The air grew cold, then colder, then cold enough that her breath crystallized in front of her face, though she could not see it. At 200 steps, the walls changed. The stone became smooth, almost polished, and the texture under her fingers shifted from rough granite to something that felt like bone. She stopped. The shard in her hand was hot now, uncomfortably so, and she heard it. A whisper, so faint it might have been the movement of air through cracks in the rock. "Who walks in the dark?" Kaelindra did not answer. Morgath had taught her that voices in cursed places fed on attention. She kept walking. The whisper grew louder, layered, as if many voices were speaking the same words at slightly different times. "Who walks in the dark? Who carries the blood of the broken throne?" "I do," she said finally. "Kaelindra, daughter of Aldrich, heir of Valdris." The passage opened into a chamber. She could not see it, but she felt it. The sudden emptiness around her, the way the air changed from confined to vast. The whispers stopped. In their place was a silence so complete it had weight. And then something touched her face. It was cold, and it was not a hand. It was a presence, formless and vast, pressing against her skin like water under pressure. The shard blazed against her palm, and for a moment she saw, not with her eyes, but with something deeper. The chamber was round, its walls covered in spirals that matched the patterns on the mountain gate. In the center of the floor, a circle of black iron was set into the stone, and within that circle, a single word was carved in letters that predated the kingdom. "Answer." The presence withdrew, the silence returned, and Kaelindra understood. The gate was not a door, it was a question, and she had to answer it before she could pass. She sat down in the center of the iron circle. The cold seeped through her clothes, through her skin, into her bones. She closed her eyes and waited. The question would come. She did not know how she knew this, but she knew it the way she knew her own name, a certainty that had nothing to do with evidence. The voice, when it came, was not a whisper. It was a vibration, felt rather than heard, rising through the stone and into her spine. "What do you seek?" "The throne of Valdris." "Why?" "Because it is mine by blood and by right." The vibration changed, became sharper. The iron circle beneath her grew warm, then hot. "Blood is a thread, right is a word. Neither opens this gate. Try again." Kaelindra felt the first flicker of fear. She had prepared for tests of strength, of courage, of lineage. She had not prepared for a riddle with no rules. "I seek the throne," she said, "because the kingdom is dying. The usurper feeds on its people. The land is sick. The throne is the only thing that can heal it." "The throne does not heal. The throne consumes. You know this. Your mother knew this. Why do you lie?" The heat intensified. Kaelindra's hands began to tremble. "I seek the throne because I have nowhere else to go." Closer. "I seek the throne because I am afraid of what I will become if I do not." Closer still. The heat stopped. The cold returned. And in the silence, Kaelindra heard her own heart, and beneath it the truth she had been running from since the day she fled Valdris. "I seek the throne," she said, because I want to be worthy of the people who died for it. My father, my mother, every soldier who fell in the rebellion. I want their deaths to mean something. I want to carry their weight and not break." The chamber was silent. Then the iron circle began to glow, not with heat but with light, amber light the same color as the shard in her hand. The spirals on the walls began to turn, slow at first, then faster, and the light converged on the center of the circle, on Kaelindra, on the shard she held against her chest. The floor beneath her opened. She fell. She landed on stone, hard, the impact driving the breath from her lungs. For a long moment she lay there, gasping, the shard still clutched in her hand. When she opened her eyes, she was in a chamber lit by torches that burned with no smoke and no sound. The iron gate stood before her. It was not a portcullis. It was a wall of black iron, seamless and perfect, rising from floor to ceiling without a single joint or hinge. Its surface was covered in the same spiral patterns she had seen on the mountain gate, but these were alive, moving, shifting, rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt to follow. At the center of the wall, a single line of light ran from top to bottom, thin as a blade's edge. The gate had no handle, no lock, no visible mechanism. Kaelindra walked toward it. The shard in her hand was so hot it burned, but she did not let go. She pressed her palm to the iron. The gate spoke, not in words, in memory. She saw her father Aldrich on the day of his coronation, young, strong, his hands clean of blood. She saw him 20 years later, kneeling in the obsidian hall, the usurper's blade at his throat. She saw her mother Alara standing in this very chamber, her hand pressed to the same iron, her face wet with tears. She could not open it, the gate said. She was worthy of the question, but not of the answer, are you? Kaelindra closed her eyes. I don't know. Honesty? Good, but honesty alone does not open this gate. Then what does? The willingness to become what the throne requires, not what you want to be, what the kingdom needs you to be. Kaelindra thought of the outcasts in the northern wastes, the empty villages, the blood tithe, the faces of the people in the warrens, looking at her with hope she had not earned. Show me what the throne requires. The gate's light flared, and Kaelindra saw. She saw herself sitting on the obsidian throne, the crown on her head, the kingdom at peace. She saw herself old, gray-haired, surrounded by children who did not know the taste of iron in their water. She saw herself dying in a bed, not on a blade, her name spoken with love rather than fear. Then the vision shifted. She saw herself on the same throne, but the crown was eating into her skull. The stone was drinking her blood, her memories, herself. She saw herself becoming the thing in the throne, not a queen but a vessel. She saw the kingdom wither under her reign, the same sickness that had consumed her father spreading through the land like rot through fruit. This is the price, the gate said. The throne gives you the kingdom, but it takes everything else. Your mother saw this. She chose to walk away. What do you choose? Kaelindra's hand was still pressed to the iron. The shard was so hot it had begun to scar her palm, but she did not pull away. I choose to open the gate, even knowing the cost. Even knowing. Why? Because the kingdom is dying now. Because the people in the warrens are starving now. Because the usurper is bleeding them dry and I am the only one who can stop him. If the throne takes everything I am, then let it, as long as it gives them a chance first. The gate was silent. Then the line of light at its center widened. The iron began to part, not like doors swinging open, but like a wound healing in reverse, the metal flowing, separating, creating a passage where none had existed. The iron gate opened, Kaelindra stepped through. She emerged into a chamber of impossible size, the obsidian hall, the throne room of Valdris. The ceiling was lost in shadow, the walls lined with pillars of black stone, and at the far end, on a dais of steps worn smooth by centuries of feet, sat the obsidian throne. It was not a chair, it was a growth, a formation of black crystal that had pushed up through the floor like a tree through soil. Its surface was faceted, each face catching the torchlight and throwing it back in a different color. It was beautiful, it was terrible, and it was empty. Kaelindra walked toward it. Behind her, the iron gate sealed itself with a sound like a tomb closing. She was in the throne room, the true throne room, and the usurper did not know she was here. She touched the shard to the throne's base. The crystal accepted it, drawing the fragment into itself, and for a moment the entire hall hummed with a sound that was almost music. The throne was whole again, and it was waiting.